we know from 1990 to now, the sport is very different. And I knew what the sport was supposed to look like. I kind of, from being a parent, I knew. But I also, when I had taken over the school program, we walked into our first camp, and I had no idea what to expect. It had been since high school, since I had been at camp. So I walked in, and the first year I just kind of observed. I kind of was like, okay, what is happening? What do I need to do with my squad better? You know what I mean? I had taken over from a girl who didn't, when you're a school, at least in the United States, nobody wants to coach cheerleading. They just kind of get stuck doing it. And so they get hired as a teacher, and they're like, oh, here, you're gonna coach this team. And so I was in that position where I'd taken over from somebody who really wasn't passionate about it. And so I said, you know what, rather than changing anything this year, I'm gonna go and I'm just gonna watch. I'm gonna see what we need to do, what I need to do, to make this a better squad. So within a year, I had kind of like went in with a game plan for my next season, and I hired some of the coaches from Stars. They came over, and that's how we all got introduced, and outside of our girls being there. But it was interesting to just see that, I played a really important role, but there was other people that played critical roles. And we, like I said, Danny and I don't know that, our coaches are, I feel like, some of the best on the planet as far as talent and getting in there and knowing how to coach and teach. And so we knew that we couldn't do that part. So it was really crucial for us to make sure that we, not only in the coaching part, but other parts of our business, that we hire people that can make up for our weaknesses and where they are at. So, so we, being honest with ourselves, we were smart enough to know that we couldn't coach, And I think, at least in Texas, like I was telling you, there's a gym, you can go 10 miles and find another gym. And it's usually these, and I'm going to probably sound like myself, it's usually these cheer moms who are like, oh, well, my daughter is, wants to cheer, so I can open a gym and make some money. You know what I mean? Like, that's usually, I think, how these little ones are popping up, happening. And they haven't taken into account any of the stuff that has to, and my kids are in it, so I don't want to, I'm not knocking them at all, but I think that, we kind of got lucky the way that we fell into it, but we were also smart enough to know that we couldn't go open a gym where we were at, because the gym that we were at was very successful, and we would have, we knew a lot of it had to do with the coaching staff. We knew there was other things that we knew why the gym was being successful. So we were smart enough to know that. So I think just being honest with yourself, evaluating our strengths and weaknesses, and wearing too many hats, which I think a lot of smaller gyms that open and you first open, you're the janitor, you're the coach, you're the owner, you're the parent, the one the parents beat up on, you do all of that. And so we kind of, that first year, other than coaching, that first year we did everything. We did the managing of the software program, we did, class enrollment, we set all of that stuff up that was everything to do, we did it all. And so.
But I think at that point in the process that we're going through, it was critical that we did. Mm-hmm. You have to know the details. You have to be able to understand everything that happens in your gym, especially if you're just starting out or you're trying to expand to provide a different experience for your membership. It's important that you know all those nuts and bolts, at least for me personally, because I have to be able to internalize it, and I'm not very, you can't tell me something and then I see it and get it. I have to see it, I gotta tinker with it, I gotta mess up, and all that good stuff. So that way, when I put somebody in charge of that role, I know with confidence that I can go back and look and be able to provide feedback saying, hey, listen, this is what you're doing, this is what we're doing, but I need you to be able to do this. So if you're just starting out, it pays huge dividends to wear all those hats. It's gonna be painful for a little while, but it makes sense for you to do that, at least from my experience and what I've seen. If I didn't know all of those things behind my software, if I didn't sit down for hours and hours and go through scheduling, of classes and scheduling of coaches, if I didn't, focus on, okay, payroll, here's what I'm doing, this is why I'm doing it, here's the process that we're going through. If I didn't do all those things and she didn't do all those things, then I don't think we would be able to put the right people and the right matches in those spots now that now do those things. So just a side note when I was hearing you talk.
Yeah, and then take advantage of the parent to save on your budget. Take advantage of those parents, athletes, and coaches and athlete skills. We have one of our coaches who recently came on who. I don't think we could run our business right now. I mean, I shouldn't say we could run it without him, but he wants to learn. He wants to learn every part of the business, and he's helping us with everything. And he's kind of one of our but he had a really big UCA background. He was coach college team, and so he's just wanting to learn. And so in doing that, we've found not only a friend, he's a great friend now to us, but he helps us with so much of the business aspect and has been able to take some of that load off. So like we feel comfortable coming here. I don't think 2 years ago we would have felt comfortable leaving the gym. So it's nice having people like that. And then coaches, we've had a couple coaches who have tried, they're like, I want to do your pro shop, we gave them the opportunity. We're like, okay, these are all the things that we're looking for. You need to develop a plan. You need to have, and some of them were able to kind of be successful with it. Some of them it was just a little, I think, a phase they were going through. They wanted to try, and so, but we have, and then obviously athletes. Some of our world's kids who are scholarshipped, we definitely take advantage of them, knowing the sport, knowing how to coach, coming in and helping some of our classes and things. So, and then how are your teams doing? And don't blame the judges. I think that's one of the things that frustrates us the most is that when we see these smaller programs coming in and it's, I didn't get scored right, I didn't do this. And I guess because I was, from where he came from and where I came from, when I was a teacher and we would, we had in the state of Texas, there's STAR testing, which is, the evaluation test for, and it, you can't, if you have, 7 classrooms of teachers teaching the same content and, one teacher is very successful and another one isn't, you don't go back and blame the test people. This teacher can't do that. You know what I mean? Because obviously she's, if you have gifted kids in one class, or AP class, and then this class over here isn't, there's a little bit of a difference. But at some point you have to take accountability and start, realize, okay, maybe I'm not the person that should be coaching. Maybe I need to hire somebody or that complements me. You know what I mean? Like we have coaches that we've, hired who complement another coach in order to balance them out, and they do a great job. So just to kind of be able to see that and be able to take a step back and say maybe the investment into somebody coming in and doing it will help my business because then the teams would do better, and go from there. So and then sometimes good coaches are like artists, and I had to really talk to my husband about this. Again, him coming from the corporate world, he was like, nope, this, this, they need to be on time, they can't do this and this and this, they need to wear this. And but a good artist, just like a good choreographer, they're because of their creativity and sometimes the things that you need to then, for what they're talented at, they're not going to be your typical, we kind of pride ourselves in finding those diamonds in the rough that maybe these big gyms wouldn't hire, but we're like, no, like for us, they do such an incredible job, but they probably wouldn't be successful over there. So they're just good for our culture. So, and so we let that creativity kind of, like we let them, kind of go with that. So anyway, so yes, so being honest with yourself. So, okay. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So you're saying that because they're like artists and obviously like
Mm-hmm. Right.
Are you saying that you'll be like a little bit lenient on maybe who they are because of what they can?
Yeah, and if it was up to me, like my whole staff would be that way. He brings that balance of, you know what I mean, of, okay, like there's the difference between irresponsibility and like letting somebody kind of be themselves a little bit. And I think that when we have some coaches, we have 4 or 5 coaches who are like these big guys that can coach tumbling and can do this. They could not teach a dance for their life, you know what I mean? And then, but they might have, so they have some of those weaknesses where I have some of my really, really creative ones who maybe, they just have a, they're maybe not always on time, or they, you know what I mean? Like, and so but these coaches over here respect that they can't do some of the things that these coaches can do. So it's all about that, what we talked about in that first session of integrating those people into your culture they're all going to kind of understand that and know that, okay, these coaches have this strength, these coaches have this strength, but we also have to know that they both have weaknesses, which is why they balance each other out. So,
and I would say, just in that situation, if you have somebody who is impacting the culture of your team, then I think what Rebecca's trying to say is that, at least from my observations, I'm in the gym every day, right, is that you're not always going to get, they're not always going to make the best decisions, but as long as the decisions they're making don't have bad intent and they're not willful, and it's more of that maturity and that growth process that they're going through, because you have to know your staff. And a lot of our staff's, really low 20s, or they're still growing. They're still getting their maturity under them. And so as long as they're showing advancement in that development, then those are the coaches that really do well in our environment. So go ahead.
Yeah, definitely. So we kind of, we both kind of asked each other what our weaknesses were, and I think
for fun, to be completely transparent, we decided, hey, why don't we just throw up a slide on there that just kind of shows us evaluating ourselves, who knows, maybe this is an exercise that you can go through, on your own when you have time, and just be honest with yourself and try and figure out, okay, what am I really good at and what am I not good at? And then the next step from this, which Rebecca and I haven't done, is you go to individuals on your staff that are that are really objective and have a good insight on what's going on, and say, okay, how do you see me? Where are my strengths and where are my weaknesses? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it
is. It's very frightening.
It is. I know. It is. It's a little scary, right?
Yeah.
And then what you'll do is you'll say, am I calibrated or am I not calibrated? And what I perceive of myself when I look in the mirror, are other people seeing me that way? Mm-hmm. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you go, oh my God, I got to change all these different things about myself. It doesn't mean that, but what it does mean is you go, okay, let me get some self-awareness going on here. Mm-hmm. Let me start to figure out, maybe if I'm in a certain situation, let me act differently and let me see if the outcome's different. Mm-hmm. Okay, because everybody knows when I tell you keep doing the same thing, you're going to keep getting the same thing, right? But if you want a different outcome, after you go through that exercise, if you start to change your behaviors a little bit and you give an individual a different experience, you might get a different outcome. And it may be the outcome that you're looking for. So it doesn't mean because somebody puts something on paper that defines you and it puts you in a box. But what it does do is it does help give you some awareness, so that way you can go discover whether those answers were accurate. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you have to be open to that, right? You have to want to grow, and so that's what this whole premise is. So you could probably guess all the things for me.
So we put them both on, like mine and his are over here, and mine are his over here. So leaders and compassionate. I think, obviously we both like, talking and speaking. Danny is, he definitely is more, with the kids and the athletes. He's that one that stands up and kind of, leads them to like a motivational place. I'm a more compassionate one. Like when we have I always tell this story of trying to get our kids to understand really, really what we are there for. And I have this story. It's one of my favorite stories to tell on a young lady who made a really great impact on my life. And so I kind of go in with this picture and tell them this story. And it's a kind of a sad story, but it's a good thing behind it. So that's kind of my expertise. But Danny's very compassionate too. Don't worry. But he is kind of known as the tough guy in the gym, because he's the one. Just put it this way: when anybody has trouble paying their bill, they call and ask to speak to me, and he's like, and so they want to talk to me, and they don't want to talk to Danny, because Danny's so. But business process with athletes and parents. This is more Danny. Obviously, his is that's his whole background, and so he does that very well. If it would have been me, I would have been like, okay, what do we, you know, I wouldn't have known all the insurance and everything that was behind opening a gym, and all of that is totally foreign to me. So, you know, it's he's awesome.
And it's really, really important to know all these things. I see a lot of people set up their business, and there's a lot of exposure, unneeded exposure, you know, that's you know, at least in the States, that they're taking on. And so, I'm at the USASF conferences. I believe that the number that was shared with me is, at least in a certain regional area, there were probably close to 50 gyms that had shut down from one year to the next. You know, but there's a lot of gyms, don't get me wrong, you know, but to shut down, because, and a lot of it has to do with preparation on the business side, you know, so those are areas that are really important to us. There's a lot of things that we do that probably others don't, and that incur a cost, but when it comes to liability and protecting your business and your personal items from your business, it's really important to understand some of these different structures.
See, and if I didn't have him as a husband, I would have none of that. You know what I mean? Like, I would know. Like, it was like paying taxes. I was a teacher, and they took it out of my check. I was like, oh, I didn't know I needed it. So, you know, knowing that, oh, all that money in the bank needs to go to IRS. So it's like, and then the sales communication, that is definitely his forte. And then approachability is one of my strengths. I think definitely. A lot of, and then problem resolution, I think we kind of work together on that. Yeah. But and I'm really good at innovating. Like, I come up with all these different ideas. I'm trying to make more revenue, but I have zero idea how to put them in place. Like, zero. I'm like, that's your, you know, help me. And so, and then difficult messages. Danny's really good at that. I'm getting a little bit better on some things. Hiring, and then the coaching process. Like, Danny's both of those things that I think we kind of. But yeah, weaknesses, which is probably not a weakness. Both of us have a very low tolerance for drama, but he's got a zero tolerance. Parents, like, you know, our office manager, Lisa, if you ever watch this, we have Lisa and Kristen, and they are. I ended up hiring one of our moms who are crazy cheer moms. Just, she found out, you know, like, things like looking up tax records where a certain gym was going to open before anybody knew. And so, but she was brilliant. But she, you know, anyway, I ended up hiring them, and they love to just sit and gossip, and, you know, and they know that when we're in the room, they have to shut it down, because we just, it creates, anyway. So we, and then low levels of accountability and approachable, like, that's also bad when people, like I said, when people want to approach you, when you're like,
when someone plays a victim, we have a hard time with that. It is tough for us. That is definitely a weakness of ours. Approachable. It's funny that we have it over there. So probably that approachable is more towards me, you know, and it's probably the way I carry myself. Yeah. You know, I struggle with it. I was driving the other day, or I was sitting somewhere the other day, and I was like, my youngest daughter is kind of like this.
She's 18.
Yeah, and I expressed to my wife, I was like, you know, I don't even know if Cammie likes me. You know, I verbalized that, and I go, she just, I just don't feel it. And she goes, well, that's how you are sometimes. Yeah, and I was like, oh. She
loves him more than anything, but it's just, she's just so stoic sometimes, and she, you know, doesn't like drama, so she, like, anyway, her personality is very dry. And but I think on that, like, the coaches approach me, like, when they, you know, want to, like, you know, oh, I need to leave early, you know, and we know it's for, you know, to go to a concert or something. I don't ask those questions. I'm like, okay, like, you know, and I'm kind of okay with it sometimes, or I'm like, oh, sure. And he would be like, for a concert, heck no. You know what I mean?
Would you let our cheerleaders not come to practice?
I know, yeah. I know. So, opinionated, I don't know if that's you or me. Is that you? That has to be you.
Probably.
And then that's me, lack of planning with innovative ideas. I come up with really great ideas, but I just can't plan. After that, I don't know what to do with them. And then question others' approach in situations, and that's Danny, I think.
Yeah. That's definitely me. I mean, someone will come and ask me a question, and I'll say, hey, what's the motivation? You know, tell me a little bit about where we're at, where you know, what, because there's always a why behind a question, you know, or if I see somebody doing something, I'm like, okay, so tell me why we're doing this, just help me understand. And if people are not comfortable with that environment and that coaching, as I am, I'm just used to people asking me questions, it could be taken as a negative, so that's definitely mine.
Yeah, and then delivering difficult messages and holding others accountable. Before we hired our office manager, I was afraid to make those phone calls to people who had not paid their bills. And now I have, and he was not, but when you have 1,000 people paying, it's difficult. So it's Lisa is our lady, yay Lisa, and but she has no problem making those phone calls and making sure that they pay. So I knew that was probably one of the best things.
And I'll tell you.
Yes, both. Well, and
Well, it's just also you kind of learn things by accident sometimes. And what I've learned by transitioning this to somebody else is that whenever we get to those very limited problem type cases that have ongoing type situations, then I can come in and come from it, and work those cases. And separating myself from that has actually made me more approachable to other people because we have somebody else doing it. They're the ones that are coming in and making sure people are paying their bill, and it's not necessarily me. So if I have, let's say 20 people I need to call that month, then all 20 of those people think I don't like them, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas, we have somebody else doing it, and so, it's not even a conversation I'm involved in, so we still have that conversation and that approachableness,
Mm-hmm.
Yes?
Do you have any problems with the office manager being a parent with that same thing? I know my admin is a parent,
right,
and she's amazing and wonderful, and like a
yeah.
person that I'm not. But she struggles sometimes with those phone calls because she's then a parent on that team with
Yeah.
other children.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a great question.
It's
a great question. Yeah. I would tell you,
she's a parent. She's a parent. She has 2 kids.
Yeah,
in her
she's a parent. But as time has gone on and they see the behaviors staying consistent, it's accepted.
They learn to respect.
Yes. Initially there was that uncomfortableness, but now that we're, a few years down the road, they understand that that's what her role is.
Yeah.
And so when we have our parent meetings at the beginning, we literally describe the roles of our staff and what they do. So, but that I can.
That is coming more from her.
Yeah, it is. And
Yes.
she lost some friends due to it, but I think she's okay with that. You know what I mean? But if you're a person like me, it would have devastated me.
She's she's better at it than I am, but she still likes to be liked.
Yeah, exactly.
Who doesn't, right?
Yeah, I know.
No, good question. But it's going to be uncomfortable for a minute. And usually in our business, we have parents that are, working, doing stuff with us, and we have, so it is part of our, I guess, our culture. And it's not just us; it's any business that opens up. Just so to make you not feel bad. And what I remind myself is when I'm working with my clients in financial planning, they open their business, right? They start their business. Well, who's their attorney? Their brother-in-law, who maybe gets 10% of the company that they don't have to pay, right? And so every business, when they're starting out, or small, medium-sized, closely held type business, structures their process that way. So we're definitely not the one-offs. We're the norm.
Mm-hmm. And then the industry has too many chiefs learn to step back. We've noticed this when we go to, when we see other gyms. I think it's been, everybody, that's one of the really unique things. And I think if Ray Jasper was standing here, he would tell us that too. He tell everybody that we don't have those chiefs, you know what I mean? There's Danny and I, but we really try to make our staff feel like that they, they can all go in and do anything. But you have to, I think as an owner or a coach, you really need to be careful and take a step back and say, trying to trust other people to help you do your job, and understanding that it may not be the product that you want sometimes, but if you learn to work together with them, and our staff is so complimentary, you know what I mean? They work together to do that. And I think if we had that where we had, those, I just hear about DJ he's the DJ Yarder owns Cheer Updates. Anyways, he has this big company. Well, he flew into our gym to do a thing on us, and there was a couple things that he noticed, but he said, "I can't believe that your staff all works together." We have two full floors of 9 panel mats, and in those 2 floors we have 4 teams practicing. We have 2 tumbling classes happening and a jump class, and stunt practice, and our kids doing all these other things happening. So it's he goes, our staff would be screaming at each other because they, you know what I mean, they're like, no, the floor is mine right now. And we don't, I don't know if it's just a byproduct of how we all have to integrate and work so well together, but it definitely is something that's helped us, and we.
Yeah, that would definitely be poor behavior, not working together and using that space.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then when we first came into the industry, we called every single person that we knew that we admired and we loved their gym or loved things that they did or we liked certain parts of it, we would call them and ask them, like, what do you do? Like, we went to all the conferences, we tried to absorb everything, and we made, what worked for us. Because obviously everything that we're telling y'all today is not gonna work for everybody here, all the things, but if you take 1 or 2 things away from everything that you hear, about other programs or things that are going well, like, that's how you build it and make it your own. And
I mean, one of the things that we did also is that it's the gyms that you admire. Right, so it's, they don't necessarily have to be your best friends, right? But if you see them doing something right, you want to try and figure out a way to understand that.
Yeah.
So I was probably on I had Brett Hansen from Spirit of Texas on my speed dial. Mm-hmm. I mean, he nurtured me through so many things as we were taking steps, and just thank goodness we had a great relationship with him, and he would actually pick up the phone and talk to me. So if you don't have those types of relationships with people, I know it's uncomfortable. I mean, this is uncomfortable for us, having a conversation with, coming in and doing all this. But we're doing it because if there's any way we can help, because of all those people that helped us along the way. It's our opportunity to kind of pay that back, and learn from all of the mistakes that we've made, because we probably made every one of them, but then also, what was going well. So, having people like Brett be able to have those conversations with is important. So you finding those individuals here, and maybe even relying on each other back and forth, it's going to pay huge dividends.
Yeah. And I know, it's funny because their all-star director sometimes will call me and ask me questions now about some of the things. So it's like it's neat to kind of be able to share that and experience it. But it definitely is, and in coming to things like this and talking to people, and especially y'all. I mean, y'all are a whole community within yourself. Like get ideas and get things from each other. That's important. And then hire choreographers. This is one of the biggest things that we see in Texas at competitions, is the role of the owner, the head coach, and they're all one person, and then they try to do their own choreography, and I know our purpose, we talk about is one thing, All-Star is a byproduct of it, but you can't go out there and not have your member, you don't want them to look like a hot mess on the floor. And I think we've, and there's we look like, I don't know if this is a place to talk about it, but we, the beginning of the season, we had a competition where every single one of our teams looked like those teams that you're like, what is happening? And we had never experienced that before. So we kind of had to reevaluate and see, okay, what's happening? And we're back on track now, but it was very, very scary. But you have to be able to recognize that. Like I said earlier, you can't blame the judges. You're like, what's happening? What's happened? It's never happened to us before. So we kind of had to step back and say, okay, maybe we were doing too many things at once. We were trying to do, and so we kind of we did an intervention plan and we came up with it. And like I said, we're back on track now. But it was very, very scary. I don't know how, but it's able to recognize that. And a lot of times we'll see a performance and I hear the I mean, it's one of those performances you're like, what is happening on the floor? Like, are they supposed to be in the air? Are they on the ground? Like, and then I'll hear the coach go, the owner going over and complaining about their scores. And I'm like, our scores were horrible the first competition. But we owned it. It definitely was us, and we had to figure out, how to.
And it's not just choreographers. I mean, it's, making sure that you have somebody who can do your music. And making sure that you have, and here's, I'll give you my observations. When we first moved into our role, the relationships that the owner had were with the wrong people. So we had choreographers, we had music, but it was with the wrong people that had the wrong mentality or the wrong mindset. Okay, so, even though it may be a weakness of yours, because it was definitely a weakness of mine, you want to make sure that the people that you're hiring are in alignment with your values and your thought process and your level of professionalism that you expect, and not settling for less. Okay, and because that's just going to transition into the experience that's provided to your members and your athletes. And yes, Rebecca and I are here in this venue, and what we do in our personal mission, it has very little to do with All-Star, but if you do deliver a quality product, you'll be able to impact more kids with whatever your mission is. Okay, so hiring good choreographers, when we first moved in, it was not the case. We're blessed now. We have people who are professional and work with us and have the same mentality that we do. Same thing with our music, same thing with our t-shirts. I mean, everybody in alignment in that process. But it was, in my opinion, broken when we first got there. So you could keep comma music, comma whatever, comma, you could keep going on there, and having people to help you work on what you're really good at is going to be really important. And being creative as you're growing your business, to not have to write a big check for everything that you're doing is also something that you have to look for, because believe me, we're very creative in what we do and trying to figure out what works for us to be able to bring the better services to our athletes.
So, and we know that that's expensive, and we know sometimes that's a position you're in where you have to do it all. And but I think, sometimes the parents, I know that when we first started, the parents were very willing to. I was like, hey, if everybody can pay $50, we're going to have, we had this guy, John Metz, he happens to live in Austin, so he's really close to us. And we said, we want to redo their pyramid and stunt sequence, and we want to bring John in, but he's going to charge this much. There was not one parent who didn't want to do it, you know what I mean? So I think using those resources to try to, but I think sometimes also, I know for a fact there's some gyms that's what they use for their revenue. They do their own choreography because they like that money coming in, but eventually the parents see straight through that. You know what I mean? So it's depending on what your mission is. So let me see. Okay, I know that I said that take advantage of parents, the coach and athlete skills. Get to know your parents you trust, and that's a big part of it. Make sure you trust them, and even then you're going to be disappointed. Sometimes you're going to really feel like you have a gem, and they end up, you just end up having.
Has anybody experienced that, where you have somebody and then, how like, any words of wisdom to share on that, or?
Actually, it's kind of shit because it makes you more resilient, which makes your skin thicker. Like, I feel like who I was when I started the business in 5 years ago, and how lovely and personable I was is definitely not who I am today. And it's because of like the several times that I have been hurt over time. So, and I think honestly, my word of wisdom is get a thicker skin and become more resilient.
Absolutely.
It's gonna happen no matter what. So every time you get burned, it actually doesn't burn because you already prepared yourself and you're already like.
Correct. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no. And
it's, hey, that's what we're here for. I mean, we got to hear like, hey, what has been our experience and our takeaways from those things? Because I'm very similar in my aspect. When I look at things like these, and like Rebecca, I'm glad she said, hey, you're going to get disappointed. It's going to happen. You know, you are going to be disappointed with someone making a behavior decision that seems, how did you make that decision? You know, and they're going to do those things. And so for you to be able to understand that, and then it's part of that process, and it's what we all signed up for. It really, really is. You just can't sign up to coach a cheer team and take them on a mat and everybody high fives, and there's so much more involved if you want to do it right. Okay, so it's a great, I thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. Yeah, and so we have some, you know, I know that they're not in here anymore, but they'd asked about the scholarship. We do take advantage of that sometimes. You know, I used to not hold those kids who could pay accountable. You know, it'd just be a free ride. But now we make all of their families do something. You know what I mean? Whether it's they come in the gym and help, you know, clean up, or they do something. We do that as one of our ways to kind of offset some of those costs. So
yeah, and that's where that falls, is it's a weakness because of hands, right? Yeah. So if you know you're like, okay, we don't have enough, you know, people, or we can provide a better experience for our recreational tumbling classes or our jump class. Instead of having one coach there, we can have 3, because we are leveraging our scholarship athletes. That, you know, there's no free ride. Everybody has to do something, right? And so if you can create a better experience to make it not, you know, if they're in a jump class and you have 2 versus 3, these are areas that you can make those a strength for yourself by leveraging those athletes and those resources. As you're thinking about your plan, you know, so maybe it's we normally will do like a camp, you know, say we're going to do a top girl camp and all of our boys will come in and do co-ed stunning. Well, it doesn't necessarily always have to be that. It could be other things that you're doing, you know. So bolstering up your coaching staff on your you know, classes. You know, maybe having more coaches on your show team to help foster that process and help grow those kids to understand the process. You know, if, you know, like with us right now, we're going through a growth stage to where we're trying to move from one building to the next, and we had to do some renovations on a small part of our gym. And so instead of hiring people to do that, you bring these individuals in to do the demolition and stuff like that. There's all kinds of ways that you can make a weakness more of a strength because of some other things that you're doing for other people. That way everybody benefits from the situation. Sure.
Right.
Actually, it ended up with 2 out of the 3 that I've really helped in those situations, giving them jobs in the gym to sort of repay the no fees, then leaving the program totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, going to another gym.
Yeah.
Where I'm sure they're paying the fees. But do you put that into a contract or something, give them something that is a little bit more substantial?
You know, that's an interesting point, you know, because you know, time is valuable, right? And you know, let's say I had it in a contract, let's just say I did, right? I don't know if I'm going to spend the time to go and try and hold somebody accountable to something that they're just. It could. Yeah, I think it could. I really do. I mean, I'm just not. It's not part of my practice. I'm not saying that it's right or wrong. It's just not part of the practice that we currently have with that type of situation. You know, maybe we're just really lucky, but we do get those kids, right, that leave and go pay somewhere else. And I'm glad you said that, because it's really important takeaway. You know, you have in the States, you have like when we go to the conferences, you have these people. Oh, well, this kid left and they're paying over here. Well, you're not going to like what I'm going to say. Okay, so brace yourself. I always was kind of like, I came from my thought process was up until that point was, you know, if I call, like let's say a kid wants to come to my gym, I used to call the other gym and say, hey, listen, this is what's going on. Okay, this is what's happening. So what are your thoughts, right? But somebody had said, well, you know, if they left your gym with a balance and they went somewhere else, whose fault it is they have a balance? Right? And so I was like, wow, I had an aha moment there for a minute, and I was like, you know, that's not a bad point. It really, really isn't. And so, like you said, have we gotten burnt? Absolutely. I had a kid come in for like because we were so desperate when we had our first Worlds team. Had a kid come in, we brought him in, you know, we were just hoping it was going to work. Ended up being a really bad culture fit. We'd already bought plane tickets to Florida. So, you know.
And we paid off. Yeah, we paid off. His previous gym, he owned a balance, and they wouldn't sign off on the Worlds
Waiver?
for him until we paid the balance.
Yeah.
So I paid the balance, and then he wanted to keep his flights to Worlds.
Yeah. So we've been, believe me, we've been burnt, but remember
Yeah.
how in the last conversation we were like, you can either, like when we were talking about attendance, it's like, no, you have to be here, and then yes, you can miss, and then there's kind of that middle, and we're like right over here with that as well. You know, we're kind of right there. So, you know, it's, you're going to win some, you're going to lose some, but it gives you that better experience for the next time to understand, okay, this is some things I can anticipate happening. How do I how do I do my best to lessen the poor outcome in that situation?
I don't want to be in a situation where I don't help people.
Yeah.
Because,
No,
know,
absolutely. Yeah.
You do want to help, especially for the kids, you know,
Yeah.
because their families in a situation.
Yeah.
But getting burnt is sort of.
It's a tough one. Yeah, I'm more towards that. I'm not gonna do that, but it's just not realistic in my market that we're in, and especially with some of the teams that we put together. There are and the ones that we normally do provide that type of help are kids that have been with us for a while.
These were both families who had been injured.
Yeah. So
I know.
that's tough. That's
Yes, but one family in particular had declared bankruptcy as well.
yeah. We've experienced that too.
I know. We have that right now.
Yeah.
It's happy for me to send it to the
I know.
Yeah.
It'll get written off.
Yeah.
I think they settled for sending me $10 a quarter or something like that. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. No.
Did you have a question? Did you have a hand?
I was actually going to say, like, we were talking about a contract report.
Uh-huh.
It doesn't probably need to be, which is what you said straight after, anyway. So, but it doesn't need to be a formal contract, just an expectation within
Yeah.
writing.
Yeah.
You know, do this,
Yeah.
do this.
Yeah.
We have actually what we call the scholarship curse. A really high percentage of the kids who we've given scholarships for have left. Either left the sport or gone through a program or so we're doing the scholarships in a slightly different way now, where they apply and it's not a big awarded at the end of the year, it's more about needs. These bases, not about the most
Talented, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's
Yeah,
great.
we don't do ours talent based. Yeah, we definitely don't do ours talent based. It's more values based decision, individual conversations. You know, asking lots of questions and making sure that we understand what the expectations are. But even then, you know, you're gonna have those ones that do come out bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also making sure that you can afford for that to happen, so you don't have to feel like you have to get something back, if that makes sense. Like, do one less scholarship if you
Yeah.
that much to.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that I've gone now to is we really, the main thing that we need from the athletes is their competition fees. You know, that's one of the costs that we can't absorb, and so, tuition, obviously, whether they're there or not there, the coaches are still getting paid the same amount, choreography, same thing. So we kind of build those things into our budget, like when, at the beginning of the season, Ray and them charge a certain amount. So we try to cushion all of that in there so we're not losing quite so much money. The competition fees, though, are the bottom line. So, like, ours are about $1,300 a year. So that's on everybody's account, no matter what. And so that's the one fee that, and if we have, 20 kids on scholarship, I mean, that's a whole competition, that we can't pay for if they're not paying it. So it's that's the one non-negotiable, and we let them though work it off. You know what I mean? Like, we're like, okay, so that is one thing that we didn't talk about that we did. So we kind of put a number to things. So like, we have one family who the dad has come in, and we're like, okay, he has 4 daughters in our program, 4, single dad, is trying to raise these girls without, but he ended up doing our daughter's wedding, the whole wedding. He's an amazing like caterer, so he saved us about $10,000 on our daughter's wedding. So we definitely took that into account. You know what I mean? So it's but we have a number for it. We made him invoice us for what he would have charged if he would have done that independently. So like for even our scholarship kids, they come, we make them come work a camp. Okay, well we pay them. We're going to pay you $13 an hour. So, you earned $8 or whatever for this time that you were here. So, and then we apply that towards that. So the one thing that we at least do is put that $1,300 or however much it is on their account, because that, even uniforms, and I hope everybody does this. That's one of those things that we talk about, and it costs what it costs is, that you need to always cushion it just a little bit, you know what I mean? And the parents, guys, it's not that it's none of their business, but if you really discuss with them, like, listen, I could charge you just this, but there's shipping, there's taxes, there's all these other things that that I've got to do, or like somebody, they have to know that you can't run a business without making a profit, you know what I mean? Like, and for the good of everybody, because you want that to be able to use that revenue to get a new building or to buy more floors or to update your equipment, and I think that's one of the things that when we first took over was shocking for us, was that people were, automatically they think you're rich because you own a business. And then, but like, he still works, a 40-hour-a-week job. And the one thing that I splurge on is my car. And it's not like a Tesla or anything, but I have a decent car, you know what I mean? It's $35,000, which for me, that's expensive. That's the only thing that I splurge on. But after I bought that car, like, you know what I mean? And I'm like, really? He works, and trying to, anyway, I'm getting off subject there, but, but it's, I think that's the one thing that we have done that has helped, is that we've kind of make them, help pay those things through that.
There's definitely no full scholarships.
Yeah. So, and then, coaches may correct. I have one junior coach. Well, he's not even junior coach. He's on our world's team, and he does music, and he's trying to become to work for New Level, and so he's getting mentored by some of those guys, and so like next season I might have him do our show team mix or something like that. You know what I mean? So there's always things that that he can help with and kind of save some money there. So. I know that it's under know your strengths, hide your weaknesses, but looking for all those little things to save money will help your budget in the long run, where you can do more things, you know what I mean, with what you have. So create leaders and seek out athletes who are hard workers and find out where they're good at. Social media, website design, and coaching. Those are, again, I'm horrible at social media. If y'all look at our Instagram and everything right now, it is not good. But I'm also waiting, because right now we're kind of in a situation where we don't want to grow too much because we have no place to grow. So when we get our new building, I'm probably going to have one of my young kids do that so that they can, help us with that. So anyway, so do you have any input? No? Okay. Alrighty, and let's see. How are your teams doing? This is, I know we kind of touched base on that earlier, but too many coaches, owners, coaches blame the judges for their weaknesses. That is I think the biggest shocker for Danny and I when we first got in the industry, was seeing how many people go complain after they get scored at a competition. And so like I said, hire at least one coach who can evaluate all your teams and kind of go in and look. And so that's where people, guys, like, I know that, and not just because he walked in the room, but hiring somebody like a good choreographer, but you also, he can go and do an amazing routine, but if there's nobody there to execute, to clean up that routine and know what, you know what I mean, like tweak it and put it on the floor good, you have to hire somebody that can do that. You have to have somebody on staff that can do that. Otherwise, you just wasted all this money. And he wants his product to look good, which I think is probably one of the reasons that he likes working with us, other than the fact that he loves us. But that he, you know what I mean? He's the artist that goes out there and does it. You have to have somebody that can then make sure it looks good all the way through competition season. So, and then, which Danny and I could never do that. And like I said, we're smart enough to know that. So, study your score sheets. And if you're not sure on that, I mean, find out, educate yourself on it. I call Justin Carrier. He's the head of the varsity. And I call him probably once a week. And I ask him all sorts of questions. Ask Ray. At the beginning of the season, I wasn't sure how, so I was calling everybody. And but then it helped me come up with a game plan so that our gym could get back where we needed to be. And then watch your videos objectively. I think that's something that probably a lot of people, Justin said it best in one of the meetings we were in one time, is that he sees that down on the floor. Sometimes these coaches will be so excited because their pyramid hit. And it's but there's a difference between hitting and executing. And so you have to sit back, and that performance may have been your team's best performance, but you need to have somebody else watch it and say, okay, yeah, they hit, but look at all these things that they need to improve on. And if you're not one that can do that, can go back to your gym and make sure those things happen, the investment into somebody that can is priceless. That's a good investment. And then bring in somebody who's objective during your tryout time. We're fortunate in that our tryout process is completely different than everybody else's, but I think this is where a lot of those things that we were talking about, where you know your athletes and you see them, you're like, oh, Susie needs to be on this team and so-and-so needs to be on this team, and but it might just be because you really like that kid, you know what I mean? And it's you're not really looking at it objectively, what else is she bringing? What are you doing? You know what I mean? So I think bringing somebody in, if you don't have that kind of tryout process where you're trying to build the best team, you're going kind of off your customers and what they want. Bring in somebody that can help you choose that process. And you don't necessarily have to. We all know we have those kids that have bad tryouts, but our tryout process is at least 2 weeks. We go through 8. Probably we have them 24 hours before, a practice time before we actually choose our team. So we bring in people to help us kind of, it's our coaches that do it. But if we're not sure on something, or if we definitely make sure that we have the right person in place that can help us with that. And then, guys, that is, we probably should have put that big somewhere. Team placement determines your business the rest of the season. And then don't let the personal part of it ruin the rest of your season, because that's where you can make or break those. What we were talking about earlier is not placing kids on teams they're not ready for. Because even if you do have that one favorite kid that you put in that team, you might not be doing the right thing for them. You have to step back and think, how is this going to affect the rest of the team, the business, the other parents, everything else. So even if you lose her, which can be heartbreaking, it's just sometimes the best thing. So, and sometimes having a third person come in and do that, is good. And I know this is what I said earlier, sometimes good coach, well, I went through all those. Look as a routine as art. Like I said, we have some of our coaches that, brilliant. They're brilliant and they can figure things out, but they're not. They wouldn't be the model employee that we'd be like, oh no, if so, just make sure that you keep that in perspective too. Anybody, and I think if it just would have been up to Danny, like in the beginning where we were hiring people, or making all these decisions, I think he probably would have let some of them, been like, oh, okay, we don't, they're not showing up to work like when we need them or doing this, and it's a balance, it really is, and so. I think that there's a happy medium in there that we can look at. So, anything else you have?
You're
yes.
Good.
Was that my last one? Yep, that was it. So, any questions on any of those?
Where we are, we're up in Cairns, so it's a kind of regional centre. There's not a lot of cheer isn't a really big thing up there. So finding a choreographer, we'd have to fly somebody down and back.
Yeah. We build all of that. We fly 17 of his staff out. I mean, but that's in that the session that we have on It Costs What It Costs, we build all of that in, you know what I mean? Like, and when they come in town, they're like, hey, how do we, like we'll go to dinner and they'll be like, oh, no, like, and I've said, we built all of that into our price, you know what I mean? Like the parents are paying, but we can treat them out to, they're doing this great service for these kids and the kids are getting amazing things out of it. So you just have to make sure you build that all in, you know what I mean? And you have to build in all those things like anticipating people aren't gonna pay, all of those things. So we, it looks like that, oh my gosh, you make this much money. Really, in reality, sometimes it's less because you're definitely having to absorb a lot of those expensive, but I'm telling you, it's worth it. Things like that are worth it if you make that investment, and or learning from him. You know what I mean? Coming to these types of things and learning what he does. And I know last week we had John Metz came down again, and he was watching one of the routines. We were tweaking something, and he was watching the choreography, and he's a world's judge, and he was like. He goes, brilliant. He goes, his routines are brilliant in the way that and so it definitely can, but it makes a difference, when you're on that floor. And, last year it was not our best year at Worlds. I mean, it was only our second year, but our first year we got silver. And then last year, neither one of our teams made the final cut. So it was not because our routine was not good. It was because of execution mistakes. You know what I mean? Like, but our routine, we still scored really high with those, those things happening. So, and that was because of the way that the routine was integrated and the way it flowed. There's so many things that are important that if you're an average, like, my first year coaching cheer at the high school, at the junior high, my daughters, they still make fun of me, but I was like, no, I can make up the routine. And literally, I got about 2 hours into it, and they were on the floor laughing, and I was like, yeah, no, I can't do this. So it's, but I was smart enough to figure it out, and I had 2 daughters who were making fun of me the whole time. So, but I think sometimes people don't take that step back and realize what they can't do and what they're not good at, you know what I mean? Or they might be decent at it, but okay, if you're good at transitions, you know what I mean? Like, then just hire somebody to come in and do the key elements. Or if you're good at the stunt sequences and pyramids, bring somebody in to, make it all flow together. So we can't change. It's hard for us to change our routines because his are so intricate. And so we budget in there. We need to fly him back out to do this, you know what I mean? Or we need to do this because sometimes it gets to the point where we need something changed, but if you change this, it changes this and this and this and this and this, and then it looks like a hot mess on the floor unless he comes back and fixes it. So,
and I know we're focusing a lot, and I know that when you look at your own personal business, you want to focus on those individual tactics, right? Those, hey, how do I do this specific thing? But the weakness and the strengths at the higher level, more of that strategic level, if you're operating as a leader and owner in your gym, you want to make sure that everybody understands that you're completely aware of your weaknesses and what your strengths are and what weaknesses they potentially have and what their strengths are. They have to know that you're aware of all of that in order for everybody to respect everybody's role. Okay, so it's really, really important that the point of the conversation just it revolves around, like I talked earlier, self-awareness. Right? How do people actually see me? But then also getting people to understand and respect the fact that you understand everybody's role in the gym. And your job is to orchestrate everybody coming together and being successful in their roles, right? And it doesn't mean that you stick them in a box. This is going to be important for your development of your employees. It doesn't mean you stick them in the box and say, hey, you're the guy we go to help with our stunts when they're not working. Okay? That's not the box that they stay in. It's, hey, you have done well here. I need you to grow and be able to teach people what you know so you can go learn something else.
Right.
Okay? So maybe we start putting you into a role of, okay, your next role is to make sure you're watching all the safety issues at the competition and being that communicator. And it becomes the coaching cycle. Are y'all pretty familiar with the coaching cycle and how it works? Okay, so let me give you an example. Driving a car. First time you started driving, hyper aware. You saw the squirrel over there, you saw this over here, you saw that over there. You knew everything that was going on. Now you can drive an hour park your car and you're like, I have no idea how I just got here, right? Okay, so it becomes subconscious. And then eventually you have 4 kids and they become 16 and you have to teach them to drive, right? And so that's what you want to develop in your gym as far as that coaching cycle. And that's that aspect that I'm showing with, let's say, that strong individual that can do the stunts really well that we transition over into safety, right? And we do them over here, is that they become so good at what they're doing that they can coach others to do it. And you have to have that ripple effect just flowing in your gym constantly. So that way, when somebody decides to say, hey, I'm going to go and do something different, you don't feel like you just lost half your gym, right? And you don't feel that impact. It's not a bad thing. It's actually a really, really good thing. What it means is that when that individual leaves your gym, all your parents aren't going to go, oh my God, what are we going to do? It's, hey, have fun, congratulations, we're super happy for you because y'all have done such a great job of making sure that you had a strong bench and people ready to step in. So it's really important to understand that coaching cycle and how it works, not just with your athletes, but with your employees as well. But that key thing here, if you take away anything on the strengths and weaknesses, yes, you need to understand yours, yes, but you also need to make sure that everybody knows that you have a good grasp of the whole team's strengths and weaknesses and that you are orchestrating that. And you're facilitating everybody working together to be extremely successful, not just on the mat, but probably more importantly, off the mat. And then if you ever get really, 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 really good at it, it's going to be outside of the gym as well. So you'll feel much more comfortable with that team that you have built together.
Yeah. And I think that, oh yes, go ahead. No.
What happens if you can't, like, so we've come from all of those, what happens if you can't find the people that can help fill your weaknesses? Like, we've been looking for 12 months for someone to teach hip hop and we cannot find someone.
Oh shit, just call me, I'll come do it.
No. Like tumble, like,
Yeah.
we can teach tumble, but it's not as strong. Like,
Yeah.
me and my sister are in the gym, come from a dance background. We
Yeah.
dancers, we train. Tumble is not our strongest
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
And finding someone to teach that, like,
Yeah.
we've got to the point where, like, we need to, like, train someone, grow someone to
Yeah.
step in, because we don't have anyone that we can hire
That-
to teach because of where
right.
we live. Like, it's just not.
That, I mean, we definitely struggle with that, and I always joke with Casey Blue. I'm like, so when are you going to move to Texas? Because I would love to hire him, and I probably couldn't afford him, but instead, what we do is we hire him to come do workshops for us, and we have our staff there. We brought in Debbie Love, like you know what I mean. And we offset the costs by, you know what I mean. Okay, he comes and he works with these kids, and you know what I mean, and they pay to come to his classes. And then at the same time, you know what I mean, some of our staff are there, you know, watching our new. We have our, you know, we have like we have 12 boys on our world's team, so we have, and probably 8 of them are coaches. But you know, some of them are in that role because they're, you know, they're helping us, so we hired them. So, or we're helping them, so we hired them. But they, you know, so they're learning, and so probably in about 2 or 3 years, I mean, you know, because then you have these guys who are, you know, Chris, I'll use an example. He's our one of our main coaches, and he's 30 something, about to have a kid. Like his body, he's been through the ringer. You know what I mean? Like if you coach tumbling for 20 something years, like, you know, he's so right, and so, you know, trying to like groom those younger kids, you know, but then also maybe taking on different philosophies, like bringing in Casey doesn't believe in spotting, or can show you how to coach cheerleading or coach tumbling without spotting. So that's something really important, because, you know, maybe you can have a female in that position, you know, who can coach double fulls, but, you know, it's that our gym for so long relied on spotting that it was really hard to do that. But we're kind of, you know, getting away from that, and we've got some equipment to kind of help, you know, that. But you have to. It's hard, you know. And if I put out there, you know, to Mary Went at USASF, if you know somebody who would want to coach dance, we're about to get this huge, it's 75,000 square foot building, and so we're going to be leasing out areas like to other programs. And I was like, if you know anybody that wants to do a dance program, like, you know, come in and did you mess with it?
I didn't touch it.
And but come
Not
in
touch
and
it.
you know and it's like so I basically with dirt cheap lease you know a lot of square footage to somebody to come in and do a program, and we can't find anybody. You know what I mean? Like they put it out there the whole industry, and it's like you know it's hard, and it's you know having to try to figure those things out you know is difficult.
We're at the point where we've kind of, you know, we're foreseeing the problem of, you know, we don't have these people in camps, and if they get to that point where they're good enough, they leave.
Yeah.
And they're like, damn it.
Yeah, no.
So we're just starting to like groom our own and grow our
Yeah.
own, but it doesn't help us right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, we've got students that we're trying to train up and grow, and but yeah, they're not there now. So
Yeah.
it ends
Yeah.
up, you know, I coach all the tier teams as well as the hip hop classes.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
As well as, you know, having
I know.
extra help to get into some
Yeah.
classes as well. So.
We have found over the years that we kind of eliminate those things that were you know what I mean like we had a dance team but we had a dance lady that did it, and then she wasn't very reliable, so there was nobody that could coach it. You know what I mean? Like it was like so we just had to eliminate it and you know take your losses, try to find revenue somewhere else where you know what I mean where you have you know whether it be you know, maybe conditioning classes, because it's usually easy to find a fitness instructor, you know what I mean, or somebody that could come in and do that. So we've kind of shifted it where
Yeah.
we do that. And
I would
so,
think like in your current situation, I mean, getting as creative as you can on like working together, like to bring somebody in that can go to different locations and actually building those relationships to do that. I mean, I can only imagine that y'all have a greater set of challenges bringing people, because it's not easy to get here, right? I just experienced it for my first time.
and it's not cheap. We saw the prices of tickets.
And so, I mean, if it's really, really that important, which I believe it is partnering together in order to be able to bring but it has to be individuals that you can count on, right? You know, I mean, you know, just because they say they're a tumbling coach and they happen to be an ex-athlete on a certain team doesn't necessarily mean that's the right individual. So building the relationships with people that, like Rebecca and myself, who can vet people and maybe potentially help. You know, those are things that are more long-term solutions. There's not really a short-term solution to getting you the resources that I know you need. And we were in your shoes 4.5 years ago. You know, we literally had a handful of fools in our gym, you know, a handful. And whenever they would get them, they would go drive up to Austin and go to that different gym because they had, you know, a level 5 or a world's team or something like that. You know, thank goodness they've all come back, but it took time to try and get to the point where you have a much larger percentage getting those higher level skills. And a lot of that is making our current staff uncomfortable and bringing in other people to say, hey, listen, we want you to listen to this person and take a few things away from them and not just come in here and stand around because we're telling you to. And now we're bringing this other person in, and we need you to pay attention and have takeaways and actually show that you are engaged. That's part of your relationship, you know, coming in here. That's part of, we're delivering this, we need you to deliver engagement and change. And so over time, because of that, we're starting to see a lot more advancement in those skills that you're talking about. And my last observation would be in that situation is get better at what you're good at. Okay, and so if you're competing against other individuals out there, I mean, we see it all the time with international teams. They're amazing at doing this and this and this, but maybe they don't have the strongest tumbling, but they're so great at doing these other things, it offsets that situation. You know, whereas, you know, like we have certain strengths in our gym that set us different from, you know, we go against some of these big gyms and they're just like, I mean, skill, because they have 30 kids that can do all these high level skills because they could choose from 60, right? But we all have those challenges, so you got to pick where, okay, no one's going to out hustle us, no one's going to out confidence us, no one's going to outperform us, no one's going to do all these things. So they say there's 10 things and I can eliminate 7 of them, and those 3 I got to try and get as good as I can at. But those other 7, no one's going to compete with us there. You know, so kind of like being self-aware of what those weaknesses are and where your strengths, and saying, I just got to get better at my strengths. Don't ever look at your strengths and think that you can't get better at them. You know, so getting better at those will probably offset some of that, you know, challenge that you have logistically. It'll probably offset some of that.
And like, do you choose the
Oh, it's my favorite.
Yeah.
I tell my kids that all the time. I'm like, you know, you're on your phone. and I have to remind you to go and get on your Snapchat and all this different stuff. So you're telling me that this skill is too hard for you. Well, you need to strengthen your legs. You can hop on that phone and get all that information if you really want it.
Yeah.
You know, no one had to tell me to wake up at 5 in the morning and go running whenever I was competing.
Yeah.
You know, my dad wasn't, you know, whipping stuff. It's the kids that want it. And so, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, definitely using social media.